Here's what it looks like inside the salmon's body after we've taken all those organs out. These white lines are bones. These are rib bones. This is a cross-section of the salmon's body. The white part in the middle, this is the backbone. This is actually a vertebrae in the backbone of the salmon. The colored portion circling all the way around that bone, those are the salmon's muscles. Those are the important muscles that run the length of the salmon's body to provide the power for the salmon to swim. I'm often asked, what part of the salmon's body is the part that we eat? When we eat salmon for dinner, we're eating the muscle. This cross-section also shows you how very thin the salmon's skin is. That thin white line all around the cross-section is the skin. Salmon skin is very thin. It's not tough and strong like human skin. Because salmon skin is so thin, the scales provide important protection to the skin. What she's doing is removing some of the scales from the salmon's skin. Scales are clear and see-through, so the color that you see on the salmon is the color of the salmon's skin, not the color of the scales. Salmon scales are small and round. They're made of keratin, the same material of our fingernails and toenails. Salmon also lay down growth rings in their scales. They look a little bit like tree rings, and so scientists sometimes examine salmon scales under a microscope to tell how old the fish is or where the fish came from. Salmon is cut up for food in two different ways. You might have heard of a salmon steak or a salmon fillet. Very simple difference. A salmon steak is usually a portion for one person, and it's a cross-section piece. A salmon fillet might be for like feeding a whole family, and instead of cutting the meat this way, a salmon fillet is cut lengthwise on the fish. Salmon steak, vertical cut, salmon fillet, a horizontal cut. One important difference between salmon and other fish, salmon flesh is bright colored like this. Some people even call this color salmon. Trout, which are kind of like cousins to the salmon, are similar but have some important differences, including their muscle tissue is white. This is a sample of salmon skin. Salmon skin is very thin and flexible, pliable. Some people use salmon skin to make leather and then use salmon skin leather to make products like wallets, bags, or purses and belts. Here is the backbone.
That was amazing. What happens when salmon die?
Salmon do an important job for the entire ecosystem. Salmon bring nutrients from the ocean, where there's lots of food. They transport those nutrients up into rivers and streams that usually don't have very much nutrients or food in them. So salmon bring those nutrients with them. When salmon die in those rivers and streams, lots of different things can happen. Number one, any hungry predator in the area is going to have a big salmon dinner. And there are over 100 different animals that like to eat salmon. Fish like to eat salmon, birds like to eat salmon, bears and mammals like to eat salmon. For any of the small parts of the salmon that aren't immediately eaten by predators or scavengers, those parts of the body start to break down and decomposers come in to release those nutrients from the dead salmon's body. Those nutrients then stay there, and algae and small insects can take up those nutrients, and they start a new food chain in the spring that just happens to exactly match up in time with when the next generation of salmon need new food.
So do dead salmon float or sink?
That's a tough question because some carcasses float and some sink. Remember, salmon have that swim bladder of air inside. So when salmon first die, they often float. But if that swim bladder is broken, or if a predator takes a bite out of the fish and that swim bladder breaks, the carcasses can also sink.